Fortunatus Rex and Co. From 9 Unlikely Tales. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information and to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Corey Samuel. 9 Unlikely Tales by E. Nesbit. Fortunatus Rex and Co. There was once a lady who found herself in middle life with but a slight income. Knowing herself to be insufficiently educated to be able to practice any other trade or calling, she of course decided, without hesitation, to enter the profession of teaching. She opened a very select boarding school for young ladies. The highest references were given and required, and in order to keep her school as select as possible, Miss Fitzroy Robinson had a brass plate fastened onto the door, with an inscription in small polite lettering. You have of course heard of the polite letters. Well, it was with these that Miss Fitzroy Robinson's doorplate was engraved. Select boarding establishment for the daughters of respectable monarchs. A great many kings, who were not at all respectable, would have given their royal ears to be allowed to send their daughters to this school, but Miss Fitzroy Robinson was very firm about references, and the consequence was that all the really high-class kings were only too pleased to be permitted to pay £10,000 a year for their daughters' education. And so Miss Fitzroy Robinson was able to lay aside a few pounds as a provision for her old age, and all the money she saved was invested in land. Only one monarch refused to send his daughter to Miss Fitzroy Robinson, on the ground that so cheap a school could not be a really select one, and it was found out afterwards that his references were not at all satisfactory. There were only 6 boarders, and of course the best masters were engaged to teach the royal pupils everything which their parents wished them to learn, and as the girls were never asked to do lessons except when they felt quite inclined, they all said it was the nicest school in the world, and cried at the very thought of being taken away. Thus it happened that the 6 pupils were quite grown up, and were just becoming parlour boarders when events began to occur. Princess Daisy, the daughter of King Fortunatus, the ruling sovereign, was the only little girl at the school. Now, it was when she had been at school about a year that a ring came at the front door-bell, and the maid-servant came to the schoolroom with a visiting card held in the corner of her apron, for her hands were wet because it was washing day. "A gentleman to see you, miss," she said, and Miss Fitzroy Robinson was quite fluttered, because she thought it might be a respectable monarch, with a daughter who wanted teaching. But when she looked at the card, she left off fluttering, and said, "Dear me," under her breath, because she was very genteel. If she had been vulgar like some of us, she would have said, "Bother," and if she had been more vulgar than I hope any of us are, she might have said, "Drat the man." The card was large and shiny and had gold letters on it. Miss Fitzroy Robinson read, "Chevalier de l'Oro de Lara, Professor of Magic, White, and the Black Art. Pupils instructed at their own residences. No extras. Special terms for schools. Evening parties attended." Miss Fitzroy Robinson laid down her book. She never taught without a book, smoothed her yellow cap and her grey curls, and went into the front parlour to see her visitor. He bowed low at sight of her. He was very tall and hungry-looking, with black eyes and an indescribable mouth. "It is indeed a pleasure," said he, smiling so as to show every one of his 32 teeth, a very polite but very difficult thing to do. "It is indeed a pleasure to meet once more my old pupil." "The pleasure is mutual, I am sure," said Miss Fitzroy Robinson. If it is sometimes impossible to be polite and truthful at the same moment, that is not my fault, nor Miss Fitzroy Robinson's. "I have been travelling about," said the Professor, still smiling immeasurably, "increasing my stock of wisdom. Ah, dear lady, we live and learn, do we not? And now I am really a far more competent teacher than when I had the honour of instructing you. May I hope for an engagement as professor in your academy?" "I have not yet been able to arrange for a regular course of magic," said the schoolmistress. "It is a subject in which parents, especially royal ones, take but too little interest." "It was your favourite study," said the Professor. "Yes, but— well, no doubt some day—" "But I want an engagement now," said he, looking hungrier than ever. £1,000 for 13 lessons. To you, dear lady." "It's quite impossible," said she, and she spoke firmly, for she knew from history how dangerous it is for a magician to be allowed anywhere near a princess. Some harm almost always comes of it. "Oh, very well," said the Professor. "You see, my pupils are all princesses," she went on. "They don't require the use of magic. They can get all they want without it." "Then it's no," said he. "It's no, thank you kindly," said she. Then, before she could stop him, he sprang past her out of the door, and she heard his boots on the oilcloth of the passage. She flew after him just in time to have the schoolroom door slammed and locked in her face. "Well, I never!" said Miss Fitzroy Robinson. She hastened to the top of the house, and hurried down the schoolroom chimney, which had been made with steps in case of fire or other emergency. She stepped out of the grate onto the schoolroom hearthrug, just 1 second too late. The 7 princesses were all gone, and the Professor of Magic stood alone among the ink-stained desks, smiling the largest smile Miss Fitzroy Robinson had seen yet. "Oh, you naughty, bad, wicked man, you!" said she, shaking the school ruler at him. The next day was Saturday, and the King of the country called, as usual, to take his daughter Daisy out to spend her half-holiday. The servant who opened the door had a coarse apron on and cinders in her hair, and the King thought it was sackcloth and ashes, and said so a little anxiously. But the girl said, "No, I've only been a-doing of the kitchen range, though, for the matter of that, but you'd best see Missus herself." So the King was shown into the best parlour, where the tasteful wax flowers were, and the antimacassars, and water-colour drawings executed by the pupils, and the wool mats which Miss Fitzroy Robinson's bedridden aunt made so beautifully. A delightful parlour, full of the traces of the refining touch of a woman's hand. Miss Fitzroy Robinson came in slowly and sadly. Her gown was neatly made of sackcloth, with an ingenious trimming of small cinders sewn on gold braid, and some larger-sized cinders dangled by silken threads from the edge of her lace cap. The King saw at once that she was annoyed about something. "I hope I'm not too early," said he. "Your Majesty," she answered, "not at all. You are always punctual, as stated in your references. Something has happened. I will not aggravate your misfortunes by breaking them to you. Your daughter Daisy, the pride and treasure of our little circle, has disappeared. Her 6 royal companions are with her. For the present all are safe, but at the moment I am unable to lay my hand on any one of the 7. The King sat down heavily on part of the handsome walnut and rep suite, ladies' and gentlemen's easy-chairs, couch, and 6 occasional chairs, and gasped miserably. He could not find words. But the schoolmistress had written down what she was going to say on a slate, and learned it off by heart, so she was able to go on fluently. "Your Majesty, I am not wholly to blame. Hang me if I am. I mean, hang me if you must. But first allow me to have the honour of offering to you 1 or 2 explanatory remarks." With this she sat down and told him the whole story of the Professor's visit, only stopping where I stopped when I was telling it to you just now. The King listened, plucking nervously at the fringe of a purple and crimson antimacassar. "I never was satisfied with the Professor's methods," said Miss Fitzroy Robinson sadly, "and I always had my doubts as to his moral character, doubts now set at rest for ever. After concluding my course of instruction with him some years ago, I took a series of lessons from a far more efficient master, and thanks to those lessons, which were, I may mention, extremely costly, I was mercifully enabled to put a spoke in the wheel